I'm joined now by the founder of Democracy Defenders Fund, Norm Eisen. Norm, you have just proven yourself a major thorn in Donald Trump's side, blowing a huge hole in a plan that he had since day one of his administration. Can you explain what you just did in court?
We just secured the certification of a nationwide class of plaintiffs and a preliminary injunction that Donald Trump's denial of the Constitution, which says that all persons born in the United States are citizens, is unconstitutional. From the beginning of his administration, the very first day, he signed an executive order saying, no, the 14th Amendment, all persons born here are citizens. That only applied to the children of slaves back when it was passed after the Civil War. No, that's not what it says at all. It says all persons born in the United States. A cornerstone of his administration and his hatred is the scapegoating. We see that with authoritarians everywhere in the world. They always pick a scapegoat. Donald Trump is targeting migrants.
Yep.
And together with our partners in this case, the ACLU, the nation's oldest and largest Latino civil rights group, LULAC, the NAACP, LDF, Legal Defense Fund, and so many other wonderful partners, we have secured this injunction and we've put Donald Trump back in his corner. He thought the Supreme Court let him off 2 weeks ago. We've shown him that still no one is above the law.
So basically, this was a situation where Trump thought that he had carte blanche to be able to move forward with his unlawful plans, his unconstitutional plans, because he watched the Supreme Court say, in deference to him, that there can be no nationwide injunction. So one court somewhere can't look at a blatantly unlawful order handed down by the Trump administration and say, no, you can't do that, and this injunction applies to the whole country. And so he thought he got a win, but now your lawsuit basically pushed back on that and said, okay, if we can't have nationwide injunctions, we can still have class action lawsuits. And so let's find everybody impacted by birthright citizenship and say that they are part of the same class of protected people, which effectively has the exact same result as what a nationwide injunction would be. Is that correct?
That's right, Brian. About 2 weeks ago in the CASA case, the Supreme Court closed one door and said just plain old nationwide injunctions where a judge says you violated the 14th Amendment, I'm going to issue an injunction covering the country. No, but they opened another door. They said the way to do that is to go to court, have a class, that means a similarly situated representative group of plaintiffs who stand for people across the country, get your class certified. The court says, yes, that is a class, I'm accepting it, and then get a preliminary injunction that way. Well, within 2 hours of that Supreme Court decision, ourselves and the ACLU and LULAC and the LDF and our other wonderful partners and our wonderful clients, the children who have been born since February 20th or who are the parents of the children who are going to be born, those are the clients here. And with our wonderful clients, we were back in court a little over 2 hours later. 2 hours later, we asked the judge to go fast. He did, and here we are with this certification of our class and this injunction, just like the Supreme Court invited.
Right. And it's also worthwhile to move quickly because otherwise you have babies born who are literally stateless. And that is not a tenable position here. So is this retroactive to are there any babies that were born before this court ruling was handed down that are effectively stateless, who were born to undocumented immigrants, that were still like under the, I guess, temporary jurisdiction of Trump's executive order?
Well, there's issues about the timing of the executive order. Trump claims it doesn't kick in for 30 days after the Supreme Court decision, but the court was leaving nothing to chance. It did issue a retroactive injunction that goes back to the end of that original 30-day period, which is February 20th. So the injunction is for all children born after February 20th, 2025, coast to coast, who are born of where one parent was a an undocumented migrant. The other parent might have citizenship, but perhaps not permanent citizenship. Any child where there could be a question, do they have birthright citizenship? They are protected by this injunction. Now we're going to have to continue to fight appeals. But as
Right.
you know, we can't have a crazy quilt that a baby in one county is protected because a judge there happened to issue an injunction. And
Right.
then next door, a baby is born that's not protected. We need a uniform plan. Brian, I certainly haven't agreed with everything this Roberts court has done, but there's a consistent pattern where they close one door and they open another one. They make it a little tougher, but with hard work, you're able to deliver for the Constitution, for the clients. For example, remember the Abrego Garcia case? Lower court judge said the government must facilitate and effectuate the return of Abrego. No, the Supreme Court said you must facilitate, effectuate, that's too much. They compromised. Well, guess what? Abrego's lawyers had to work a little hard. The Trump administration said, oh, we're never bringing him back. Today, Abrego is back on U.S. soil and fighting, utilizing the courts, utilizing his due process rights. So, same thing here. The court made it a little tougher. Roberts Court made it a little tougher, but they did open that door. We walked through it. In fact, 2 hours after the Supreme Court's ruling, we ran through that door to protect the rights of these babies. All babies born in the United States are citizens of the United States. My parents were migrants. Every person here comes of migrant stock, except for the Native Americans.
Right.
And so this is the idea of America in action, and we're very proud that we secured that first injunction.
Now, Norm, it's worth asking here that normally when you have a federal district court, their rulings don't establish any precedent. But isn't it true that now that now that this is a class action lawsuit, the only people impacted are not those who are in this specific case? This is class
Correct.
action, and so this is the entire country. Everybody who falls into this class across the entirety of the United States is protected by this ruling. Is that correct?
That's exactly right, Brian. Normally, when a federal district court, the trial court rules, that binds that individual judge and other judges in that district may or may not agree with that first opinion. It's not until the appellate courts and ultimately the Supreme Court get involved that precedent is more broadly binding. But this is following what the Supreme Court said less than 2 weeks ago, making such news in the Casa case that the way to get a nationwide injunction and bind everyone in the country, every baby born here in the period the judge applied this to after February 20th, is through class action. And that's what we did. We got the class certified. That means the judge said, yes, it's a proper class. It represents all the babies. And we got the injunction based on that class certification. Now we'll have appeals here. But we think we're on firm footing. We did what the Supreme Court asked. Donald Trump's reading of the Constitution on birthright citizenship is ridiculous. He says it only applies to the children of slaves. It says very clearly all persons. This is an originalist court. They say follow the words
Right.
and the original meaning. That is clearly the meaning. The court has held as much for the entire history of this 14th Amendment. And we're confident that we are going to succeed on appeal.
If this gets to the Supreme Court, I know nothing is a sure thing, but it was the Supreme Court itself that left open the option to make use of these class action lawsuits. And so is there a world where the Supreme Court can say, we know we gave you this remedy, but in fact, we don't want you to employ this remedy? Like that seems complete, even for this court, seems completely outside the realm of possibility. Can you weigh in on that?
We have to be candid about the challenges that we faced and to take strong exception to some of the decisions of the Roberts Court on Trump's imperial and unconstitutional uses of executive power. I would point all your listeners to Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson's magnificent dissents, explaining why we disagree with some of the rulings of the Roberts Court. But even this court is confronted with a long line of precedent that class actions are acceptable, and with the plain language of the 14th Amendment, all persons born here are citizens of the United States. So even the Roberts Court is going to be hard pressed to disagree with what the judge did today, and what I think many other judges are going to do as these cases, these class actions, are also brought elsewhere in the country. We're expecting another decision in Maryland any day now. Of course, this case, before it was a class action, was the very first to be filed anywhere in the country, challenging Trump's unconstitutional attack on birthright citizenship back on January 20th. We filed it as soon as he did that EO, and then we did the same thing after the Supreme Court ruled that you had to have a class action. We went to court a couple hours later, raced, and now we have got the class certified, and we've got that preliminary injunction protecting all the babies. If there's one thing we should all be for, it's American babies, Brian. And that's what the Constitution establishes, a class of all babies born here. They're Americans. That's the American idea. And that is what we defended and secured in court today.
Well, look, I will always happy to give a platform to the people who are fighting, especially those who are fighting on the front lines. And you and your team at Democracy Defenders Fund and all of the other groups and other co-counsel that were involved in this case are chief among them. So highly recommend for anybody watching, if you're looking to support the work that Democracy Defenders Fund is doing, which is fighting this battle on the front lines. I'll put the link to that right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. If you're listening on the podcast, it'll be in the show notes. Norm, appreciate the work that you're doing and the time that you have today.
Brian, it's been so meaningful to me as you and I have traveled on this journey of Trump's autocratic overreach, but the pushback, including in the courts and by the rule of law. We've had so many of these conversations with your wonderful viewers and listeners. And we're on this journey together. We're going to protect the Constitution. We're going to protect all the American babies. And we're going to end this autocratic nightmare together.
Norm, thanks again.